Okay, and
Goodness, Craig, you should go for, like, some ASMR shit over here.
yeah, exactly. That's his big introduction when he wants to fucking make the appearance. He just says, "Yes, hello. I'm now recording your software, and you can hear everything that I'm saying here. Hello."
Oh god, that isn't creepy at all, HAL 9000.
Anyway,
"I'm
all right.
sorry, boo boo. I have to take the picnic basket."
I'm sorry, I just had to shoot him. He just wouldn't listen. He just would not cooperate. Look, Ranger Smith, I just saw his whole bag of guns, and I just said, "Nope, he would not let me have the picnic basket."
God, I feel like Harvey Birdman coming back over here with the whole boo boo episode.
Oh, alright.
Dorkos in Weirdoz.
Welcome to the Dorkos and Weirdos podcast, the show where we talk to creatively strange and nerdy people. My name is Kai Jordan. Today, my special guest is someone I've known for a while, someone I have worked on various projects with, someone who has been my voice director, one of my closest friends, and a major influence on my sense of humor. Would you like to introduce yourself, special guest?
Sure, Martin Lis, like, producer, voice, cosplay, I did a little bit of everything at one point, and, now just kinda helping with, writing and content producing in a way. Now, am I a dorko or a weirdo? How do you establish the one here?
Oh, I'd say like it takes the nerdy side of us to bring out the dork in us because we go a little freaky and all that. And the weirdo part is us that we show pride in it and we just don't really care about the public because that's what people usually deem us as such. And we say, yeah, damn right, that's what I am. And also unintentionally, the name is also kind of inspired by Bill Cipher from Gravity Falls, so that's kind of that's hence the logo and shit. So
Oh, yeah, makes sense, makes sense.
yeah, because but yeah, and speaking of Dorkos and stuff like that, one thing like the first time we ever worked together on something was we worked together with LJ, a mutual friend of ours. I had her on a podcast last time. We did this Sonic thing a while back, and I even saw the live stream you did with her
Oh,
when we were
goodness,
talking about that was
that was a very different time back then.
yeah, it
Uh,
was.
I actually remember, fondly because, me and LJ actually started out on a project together where I was asked to, help, manage some kind of, other project. It was Batman related. I
Right.
just remembered LJ was part of a voice cast there, and she was doing Joker, and I said, "Okay, let's hear your Joker," and she gave this really mediocre Heath Ledger impression. I just told her, "Okay,
Mhm.
you're fired," and that's how we became friends after.
Yep,
It
that is
was it
that is
was an interesting story, so, yeah, just be honest with how you wanna be, and things turn out for the better, and LJ kinda just invited me over for this thing. I'm like, "Well, okay, sure, I'll do it," and, I just kinda started doing my, Robotnik voice from there. It was like it was a huge influence with, Long John Baldry and, like, Dean Bristow kinda thing, because those are my 2 favorite interpretations.
Mhm.
Kinda started going off from there. I heard Kai over there as Silver, and I was like, "Oh, man, he actually sounds." Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe, but people did sound pretty good, like, back then to me,
Yeah.
as much as we like to criticize our own performances. Just, it takes a bit of time, like, we're always gonna go through, like, the rough edges there, and, lo and behold, many years later, I was just like, "You know what? I kinda wanna bring Kai back as Silver, so we'll just do it with, Spinning Egg Zone, just make him into a frantic effing mess."
Yeah, exactly. And that it is, and I agree with that. Like when you start, you have like when I was starting, and a lot of us had like really piece of shit microphones. Like I was recording with the like that mic, a Logitech microphone that you not the ones that you would see in Rock Band. Those fucking
Oh,
things.
the funny thing is I was the one suggesting everyone back then with it. I was using a crappy, webcam mic at the time, and then afterwards, my next microphone was actually a Guitar Hero mic, and I was the one actually telling LG, "These microphones aren't actually half bad for someone just starting out." Everyone's, like, worrying about, like, the $40, $50 mediocre mics. Meanwhile, I just found the one that was, at, like, GameStop used, and I'm like, "Oh, this actually works just as well."
Yeah, and yeah, the only problem is that it would constantly pop because I didn't know what the concept of plosives were. So,
Yeah, yeah.
I cringe every time I hear them, like, "Oh god." That every time. It's just ugh, it's bad. I don't know if it went through because I have a pop filter on right now, but
See,
anyway.
even your pop
Yeah.
filter doesn't wanna have you insult yourself.
Yeah, it has more self-confidence than I do. Anyway, about and less about that. But, like, going on about early projects like that with '06 and all that, I was in research for this particular podcast, I was doing some research, and one of the earliest
Stalker.
Yep, that's how it works. Anyway, when I was looking through some of your voiceover work from one of your oldest playlists, one thing even when we first worked with each other on older parodies and stuff, at the top of your playlist, there's something that caught my attention.
Oh, dear.
It was a video by the name of Kamek's Great Journey Director's Cut
Oh
Wrath
my
of the
god.
Beavertrons Part 1,
That was my
which
first ever voice role. Oh my
yeah,
god. I
yeah,
was hoping people would kinda forget this one, but, yeah, I
yeah,
just it was, this was, like, a very early time for me. I was just like, "Oh boy," I was going straight into, I just was, like, fresh off the boat from, like, high school, and I was wanting to get myself involved in, like, the first ever thing. And I just remembered, I think, going to, like, Voice Acting Alliance, and I said, "Okay, what's the most out there project I could get myself involved in with whatever?" And somehow that was it. It was a very man, I don't even know how to describe it. Everything about this, project was kinda surreal. I met my, good friend Kyle there. He was, like, one of
yeah.
the first voice acting friends, I ever had. Me and him are still, like, in touch, but, yeah, it was an interesting project. I just remembered it was a whole mishmash of, like, video game medias kinda compiled together, and I don't even know what the script was. It was just some kind of it was weird. Funny story is it had a lot of, interesting things about it. I think, I'm pretty sure the director hired, Kira Buckland in as one of the voices in it, in one of the episodes. And so this
Yes,
was, like,
she did.
also one of her early episodes. And, I remember Harvey Atkin, God rest his soul, was also supposed to be involved in voice, King Koopa.
Mhm.
So it was pretty nuts. So, like, it had, like, a bunch of, like, well-known names over there, but it was, like, kind of a project that was, like, all over the place. But yeah,
Yeah.
it just kind of felt like, I had no idea what was, like, kinda going on. I did, like, a few episodes. I kinda pitched some ideas, like, there's, like, some other medias out there. There was, like, a Dead Space commercial with Isaac, doing his, little thing from like, on the computer from Dead Space, hearing stuff in the ventilators. So, he was looking for ideas to connect here and there that were, like, super obscure. And I just remembered afterwards, it was just like he made, like, the next episode, like, twice. Apparently, he has keeps making the excuse of, like, "Oh, my computer got, viruses or something." At this point, I just kind of lost contact, and
Oh.
yeah, so it was just one of those, "Oh, I was, like, 90% finished, and then I got erased." I'm like, "Okay, well, just let me know." And he's like, "Oh, yeah, my computer got, hacked and all that stuff." I'm like,
Oh,
Do you
dude.
have any kind of, virus protection or something?"
Oh, shit.
I don't know, it was really weird, but, it was, like, one of my first projects. I kinda did what I did. I met, like, a few cool people that I still talk to this day. And, yeah, I don't know if, like, what kinda came of it, or what the scenario might be, but it was an interesting period in my life.
Yeah.
I'm kinda surprised you, decided to, remember this and bring this back up. This is how I'm gonna get canceled now, isn't it?
Yeah, cause like, I it was when I saw at the top of your playlist, like, it always even when we were first working with each other, like, your early channel before you formed your your Stormcrow
Yeah,
Studio
yeah.
yeah. I saw that I was like, "What is this?" Like, cause I saw at the time, it was just, like, this red thing with an alarm on it. I'm like, "What is this?" And then
Yeah, I'm pretty
I
sure it's supposed to be based off Ape Escape or something. I
yeah,
mean, that was the first voice I ever did, so I was just like, "You know what? I'll look at it fondly. I'll
yeah,
remember it was a time for me. I learned some things. I, learned not to trust some things." But, it's just there. I kinda don't like I can't say I have too much of an attachment for it, but
yeah,
yeah, it's just like, I guess it's an interesting piece of, voice acting history for me. I really don't know if it really goes anywhere. It's the same way, I guess, with, Sylvester Stallone's first acting career actually being in a porno. So it's just like
Mhm.
one of those things where it's just like, well, it happened, I guess.
Yeah,
I had
yeah.
not that I'm comparing it to that. It wasn't like it wasn't so much of a bad experience. It's just nothing really kind of came out of it, and it was just weird. I can't even describe it. It was it was like a Twilight Zone thing.
Yeah, it really was, 'cause it would start out with those Peepatron things, and then they would fucking and then it would cut down to the sprite animation of Kamek, and then it would cut to Super Mario World, and I'm like, "What is this fucking YouTube poop with voice acting?"
You know what? I would kind of that as at the time. I love YouTube poofs back then. I still kind of do now if they're made well. So
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to describe it. It's a mishmash YouTube poop of a thing.
Yeah, fucking yeah, the only YouTube poops I usually follow were Tomorrow Isle and a few other ones. You know the one I'm talking about?
I think so. Most of the stuff I kind of watch is I don't know, like like it's like like the more quality inspired ones, like Gaston gets ghosts to get Taco Bell, or I Teach Fader or Boogity Boo, that kind of stuff. It's like the ones
Right.
that kind of like really go out of their way to like really make a good joke and visualize. It's like from here and there. It's like, oh yeah, Flying Kitty's another good one with the Grand Theft Auto ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, YouTube poop is kind of like a nonsense in its own sense. It's great, and it's great. It's like great to like, kind of just like take your mind back and laugh at some complete nonsense. And I guess this is one of them. It's just I don't remember laughing too much about it. It was just I want to know. I kind of want to know what the director was smoking, because I want some of that shit now.
Speaking of smoke and weird shit, there's uh, what I remember one conversation I had with you a long time ago when Skype was still when people tolerated Skype and
Okay,
didn't just
before you continue, how drunk was I?
I have no idea.
Oh
But
boy.
one conversation we had was we were talking about you were telling me about a time where there was an abridged series based off of Thomas the Tank Engine, and it didn't go
Oh my
anywhere
god.
because of lack of interest. So so with that
Okay,
said, yeah. Oh,
I
you
can't
wanna
even remember the channel itself, but, I just remember there was this guy that, tried to hire me for a voice of another project. I barely remember it, but basically what
Yeah.
happened is, "Yeah, I heard you in this and this. I'd like to have you involved in the project." I'm like, "Oh, okay, sure. Tell me some details." And I wasn't exactly interested, but I was, decided to take some research on the guy. I can't like I mentioned, I can't like, the channel name
Yeah,
goes is out the window for me, so
okay. Yeah.
I just remembered I looked it up, and the guy apparently also had a video based around getting auditions for a Thomas the Tank Engine abridged series, and I thought, that's some brave shit over there, man." I mean, listen, I'm not saying it's not doable. People manage to make abridgments out of anything these days. Like hell,
Yeah.
the YouTuber Uncle Al, he made a phenomenal Donkey Kong Country abridged series, and it was one of the best things I've ever seen. So the fact that someone is actually brave enough to try and make an abridged series out of F and Thomas the Tank Engine, I want to know the process behind it and how it would actually work. I'm not insulting in any way. I'm just genuinely curious. I have no idea if anything went out of its way. I ended up like not doing any kind of project, but it does linger in my mind the concept of a Thomas the Tank Engine abridged series. If anyone else is able to like make it happen, please tell me the scientific process. I think the rest of the world would like to know how something like this would work,
Yeah.
especially me.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just thinking of like, what other absurd abridged series can you make? I don't know, Mr. Rogers. Like how I just want to hear like I'd love to hear ideas, the most absurd ideas for a bridge series. I think that would actually be a pretty good topic idea, and it'd be pretty hilarious. What's the most unrealistic thing off the top of your head that would never be in a bridge series, Kai?
Why
Let's
stop
hear it.
why stop with TV shows? Why not just do IKEA abridged?
The furniture, I'm pretty sure it's one of those make your own furniture. People are gonna be, trying to, like, make it in piece by piece, and then when you're trying to read out the name of the furniture at the start of it, it just summons, like, I don't know, fucking Slifer the Sky Dragon because that is some goblin hieroglyphic shit that's on there for a language.
Yeah. Yeah, and then somehow Super Mega would make a cameo in it because why not? Because a lot of those have.
No, we gotta go to the top in regards to cameos for IKEA, well, because they're famous for, for that one signature food there, let's get, Meatwad from Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Yeah, it seems that's the most appropriate thing, and then like you make me what did he talk?
Yeah, funny story, one of my very early, voice acting things was, on a friend's channel of mine. His name is also Martin, we call him Marty.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I decided, okay, for fun, I'm gonna do a Meatwad impression, see how people do. It was really bad, but I got like a lot of people telling me death threats over how bad it was.
Oh,
Yeah, and it was just I was like, oh, okay, cool. But over time, I just kind of improved, and now people are like, "Holy shit, that's a really good Meatwad." So the lesson here, kids, is don't listen to fucknuts like that. Just get motivated off of it and prove them wrong. Work with spite, my friends. Work with spite.
exactly. And another speaking as you've no doubtly shown me when it comes to like you are definitely like someone I know who has a very raunchy sense of humor and you have no shame in it.
Oh dear
And
God.
what are your biggest comedic influences? Like what shows and people make you laugh the most?
Oh God. I don't know. There's a lot I feel like there's a thing you got to influence every day yourself with. My takeaway is you never just stay with one thing. I know there's people that are like super into TV shows and whatnot, and for me, a lot of the time it's like looking at like older things and where they kind of age, but at the same time trying to like adapt it to like obviously like back then things might not age as well or other things might age perfectly.
Right.
Um Let me think off the top of my head. Robin Williams is, phenomenal and hilarious, and he's always been, like, the guy that would do anything for a good laugh just for the sake of making others happy, and,
Mm-hmm.
God rest his soul, he was a very phenomenal influence.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Carrey, wacky above everything, he actually, grew up near, not too far from, like, where I'm at, so that's my little bit of Canadian pride over there.
Mm-hmm.
Let me think. Trying to think here. Like, at an early age, my cousin, Matthew, he was probably one of the funniest people I ever knew in my entire life, growing up. Um, Man, there's just, like, so many, influences I could kinda, like, pick from, like, the top of my head, but in regards to, like, prime ones, it's I guess I kinda came unprepared with this question. There's
No,
just, a
it's
lot
all
that's
right.
just kinda, like, thinking here. These days, I would say, I think Eric Andre is one of the most fucking bravest people out there. He's a
Yeah.
nihilist, but, like, I just really find his humor astounding. It's just, like, the man just kind of gives it just, like, literally puts out a mirror over, like, how hilariously bad things can get. It's almost, like, brilliantly satirical. I went to go see him live back in Toronto with my friend Zach, and it was probably one of the best stand-ups I ever saw in my life. The man, like,
Right.
literally and yeah, he actually will, goes around stripping naked and people are drinking ranch. It's actually one of those kind of parties.
Yeah, I believe
Oh,
it.
oh, yeah, actually for, humor influence, I guess in regards to, like, internet personalities, AVGN was a good start,
Mm-hmm.
always is, still a classic to these days. Um I really dug, Ethan's style in his early H3 videos. I can't say I really follow his stuff all that much anymore because it got, like, it went, like, in a completely, different side of the spectrum to, what many of us are kinda used to or agree to, but, you gotta appreciate, like, back then,
Yeah.
the kinda, like, humor you grew up with, so, you might not appreciate the person, like, so much with what they're doing now or, moved on or whatever, but that's pretty good. Critical, Penguin Zero, Mr. Charlie, he is probably, like, one of my, biggest ones, like, growing up, like, in the early, YouTube era. I was actually following him ever since, like, I think Advanced Lawnmower Simulator, and,
Yeah.
with his, perfect monotone voice is like, going around with Cyclops fucking having sex with owls, and what's with this triangular ironclad nipple over there, fucking Mother Nature? I just love how everything he says is just, like, such a monotone and, like, raunchy sentence, but he's using, like,
Yeah.
the most obtuse wording. Is that the right word I'm using?
I have no idea.
He's, like, we're using the most, like he's, like, using, like, the most, like, weirdest terms, and I absolutely love that, and I guess a part of me is, I read, like, a lot of comics and films and things like that for, being, like, a big media guy. I guess a part of me is just, like, I've always been attracted to the idea of, just jumping people with, like, different kinds of definitions and words. I never like to use the same terminology of, like, great, good. It becomes a bit of a pet peeve for me. As
Yeah.
Christian Bale kinda said, "The worst thing you could do with your life is make it boring." And I try and make it interesting even just, like, through, vocabulary if I could. I try and be as colorful
Mhm.
as possible. So, I guess a part of that is all these sort of influences just have me try and paint the best picture I can make out of, the things. I could just make any sort of, like, cock and ball jokes all I want and, just like the typical thing. Or I could do something completely out there and perverse and make something in the level of internet common etiquette? I don't
Yeah.
know how he comes up with a bunch of that stuff, but it's effing brilliant.
Exactly. Yeah, because like I even do even when I write video essays, I always feel the need to check to do to use my finder to make sure that I'm not using the same words over and over again. And if I do, then I have to get a synonym because like it's even that same pet peeve you'll have when people read like where they read videos in the same cadence over and over again. It drives me nuts when they don't realize how repetitive they sound. And
Yeah, like,
like
you wanna give a bit
yeah.
of life to the characters. You have them seem like, you feel like if you use, like, too many of the same words, they kind of feel, they kind of feel like too monotone, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, especially yeah, like, if you add variety in your languages, you have something interesting. If you're doing the same words over and over again, you're just watch mojo.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, the aim here for me is just try and be as specific with what you're communicating as possible, and sometimes it just goes down to narrowing to, weird ass words you gotta use sometimes. Like what
Exactly.
I just said earlier is just like goblin hieroglyphics. I don't know what that fucking means, but that just makes as much sense as, you know, what I went through. So just like it's as alarming with the confusion as, anyone else who'd be hearing it. And it sounds funny, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like it honestly sometimes like that's why I think that's why the phrase like you're pulling that out of your ass is so funny because it's just you're because it's the funniest place to come up. If you're pulling a random phrase out of your butt, it's gonna make people laugh no matter what. Because it's like, what the fuck? That doesn't make any
It's
sense.
unexpected. I think that's one of the things with comedy is just like really giving them a sense of being unexpected with something. Because you get
Yeah.
like too many sitcoms where it's just like they need a laugh track. They need to rely on a recording of dead
Uh-huh.
people laughing from 200 years ago
Mhm.
on a joke that everyone's kind of gonna go see, like it's kind of gonna see coming. But
Yeah.
it's just like you kind of do something like completely left field that the humor is gonna come itself. Like none of the guests like know what Eric Andre is gonna pull out of him. Um, you know, whose line has some phenomenal improv, and like we don't know what's gonna happen, but somehow it just comes so organically and off the top of their heads. These guys are all phenomenal, like, Ryan Stiles, Colin Mockery, Wayne Brady, Greg Proops, all the guests they have. It's just like they work in such a great collaboration, and it's just, like, phenomenal, like, kinda what comes out sometimes, and, that's the kinda thing that I wanna maybe, like, help train myself every day is just, having that sense of communication. It's gonna help with both a comedic route and, I guess with communicating with people in general. If you could make them laugh, you could do anything.
Exactly. It is the ultimate charisma test.
Mhm. I think it also helps that I went to, like, acting school and, you know, got kicked out and then went to business school right after. So it's an interesting balance between knowing what to say and how to say it at this point. So
Yeah. It's definitely something if I ever have kids, like, I should say, like, no matter what they do with their life, I would heavily encourage them to take marketing or something. Because that way, if they know how whatever they go into life, they know how to sell themselves in any way they can. Granted,
yeah,
there are yeah.
yeah, marketing or even drama and like school starting out because when I was like in high school, I had to get community hours just like any other good boy Christian school out there. And what I was doing, I was part of a library event organization team called Teen Advisory Group, which was called TAG. And
Mhm.
I was one of the big fans of Who's Line, like I mentioned. So I dedicated like a whole thing with doing like an improv night with people, just kind of getting together. And one of my and I know like a few people. One of them I think is my friend's girlfriend, and they managed to get themselves involved, and they're really nervous introverts, and some of them actually managed to like help get some communication skills out of this and learn some like jumping, like keeping them on their toes and knowing how to address audiences and how to work with what they got. I think it's a good skill to have. Just improv is one of the most important things, and especially we just like encourage it with like a lot of the projects that we do. It
Mhm.
doesn't always have to be the greatest thing in the world, but it kind of helps get something organically. And we hit some real big zingers. Some of our biggest laughs we've ever had was based on improv.
Yeah. We've also worked together with a few mutual friend of ours, including Stewart, who like, both you and he are some of the biggest Transformers fans I've ever known.
Oh yeah.
And in terms of in terms of just in terms of just Transformers content in general, just what would you say is what was your introduction to this series of changing robots and also just like, where did you discover your love for Transformers, as well as what has been your, like, favorite piece of Transformers media, games, or toys, and stuff like that? What
Oh
would
man. It's interesting. I actually this is gonna be a very unpopular opinion. I I understand it's got like a big appeal, but I never got into G1 that much.
Mhm,
I'm waiting for the bonfire to start, everyone. You got a few minutes. I'll leave the door open. But no, it's I mean, like I started with watching Beast Wars actually.
mhm.
And here in Canada, we had this weird rule where we weren't allowed to go get ourselves into like, delicate matters of violence. So instead of being called Beast Wars, it was called Beasties, which I think was super ironic because Beast Wars was made in Canada. It's specifically called Beast Wars, and out of everyone, it's the country it originated from that was called Beasties, and I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Is this what I've been calling it this whole time?" People had no idea what I was talking about when I
Holy
was,
shit.
talking with my friends in America. It's like, "Yeah, so I was watching Beasties." I was gonna go, "What the hell is Beasties?" I was like, "We were watching Beast Wars." I'm like, wow, that sounds effing violent. What is that? It's like, "It's Transformers, man, Optimus Prime." I'm like, "Wait, what? Were we watching the same show? Are you sure you're not talking about beast machines?" And they're like, "No." So we are just getting ourselves in this, like, spaghetti knot of all these different terms we were trying to figure out. But yeah, it's, and, I got introduced
Wow.
to, like, Armada, like, right after, and that's where I kinda started going more into, Transformers. Oh, and, I kind of wanted to forget Energon because even as a kid, I thought that was a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Cybertron had a really catchy intro that, I always,
Mhm.
I would remember off the top of my head, and me and LJ still say it to each other to this day for God knows why.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot of it kind of stemmed from Beast Wars and Armada. It's like people might criticize Armada, but it has a real sweet spot to me. I love the anime style. I love the tone it was going for. And honestly, like a huge part of like my upbringing, I always loved characters with like a sense of I just always like found like like characters like Optimus and Wolverine and Batman, and I just always like appreciated. I grew up with a lot of animation as my kind of moral compass.
Right.
And, that's kinda what, like, kept me alive and with a good mindset here and there, and Gary Chalk is one of my I will always see him as, like, the voice of Optimus for me. Like, Peter, he's a phenomenal, Optimus. Everyone remembers him and,
Mhm.
how he does his lines and stoic but I just felt like the way Gary does it, he's always had, like, something a bit more organic and fatherly to me, and
Yeah.
I feel it just comes off a little bit more genuine than, a leader that's ready to make any kind of, you know I guess the best way to put this is how Michael Caine in the Batman movies is always ready with some kind of speech with every given situation. It's just like,
Yeah.
do you ever have a moment you could just say, "Here, here is the towel"? No, you
Yeah.
gotta have off like a two-page monologue off the great American novel, and yeah, I just feel like, I feel like there's like a genuine warmth with the way Gary did it, and I had the chance to meet him like a couple years ago at TFCon, and he
Mhm.
signed my, Optimus Primal, Masterpiece figure and had a conversation. I told him how much all this meant to me, and yeah, it was a phenomenal experience being able to finally tell someone like that, how much it meant to me, and, yeah, it's like from there, it's just, like, kinda stemmed. Transformers Primes, me and Stuart kinda got into talking when we first started. Transformers Prime was something I got introduced to through him, and I love that show, it's phenomenal as well, the writing's fantastic, I got introduced to the comics. I love some of the political, work, like, a lot of the political commentary that was involved in it. It was really ahead of its time, and it was a shame, really, when people only know, like, the live action movies and kinda keep it at that. I
Yeah.
felt there's, like, so much more potential with, like, stories explored, like, more than meets the eye and, the lost lights and all that stuff, and yeah, one of my favorite moments in all of Transformers media is actually in the comics where, Optimus is standing against the council and talking about, overthrowing them. The 3 point like how Megatron told him the 3 questions to ask, and the last one, he says, and my final question is, "How do we get rid of someone like you?" And that was, like, powerful stuff. It just had me realize that even as, like, someone as young and hopeful as that, he knows things are wrong with the world, just like how it is today, and it just kinda reflects me, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, Transformers can be a great political piece if you really look into it, but, it all started in the '80s as a toy line for, selling the same amount of units as He-Man.
Yeah. And yeah, it's true. Even, like, from what little I've read, like, when I started reading More Than Meets the Eye, there's this bit you see where because I didn't read the comics that came before it, but I knew, just, like, they set up the thing because, like, it was the Optimus Prime story, the death of Optimus Prime story, and you get an idea of what this world is like. It's just like, the set that Decepticons being the victims of a lost war, they're sort of segregated against not like, granted, they did do horrible shit, but it's just like, this is kinda fucked up. Like, some of the shit like, some of them are caged, and it's very interesting to see how it plays out because it's like, yeah, they did some really messed up things, but also, do they really deserve this?
I think at the end of it, some of them were just kinda had to be involved in the war and in a faction based on things, and really, if you think about it, Megatron was actually trying to go through this for a reason that the council is corrupt and things are going bad. What made Megatron so relatable, I believe, was, he started out as, like, like a regular Joe, like anyone else. He was a miner. Like, he worked in the mines. He knew all about, like, the kind of, he knew all about, like, the physical labor work and how bullshit things are, and it kinda hits a little bit close to home with that sort of thing. Like, these kind of things do happen. They are situational. There's a lot of characters we end up getting attached to, and shit kinda goes through the roof.
Right.
And, yeah, there's a lot that kinda goes on with these stories, and I think Beast Wars is one of the best, things as a child that I look back on that still had phenomenal writing then and still does now. And just because I might as well just, like, kinda mention my favorite characters would have to be, Soundwave, because just the kind of loyalty and, it's a badass Frank Welker voice that's going with it. I just always loved
Yeah.
his sense of loyalty and honor to someone that he considers a leader and a friend. And I think that's a very admirable attribute to have in someone.
Totally
And I
agree.
guess I kind of saw a bit of that in myself. And I guess, I mean, I fucking love Inferno. He's a fucking nut job, and I love every little thing he does, every bit of he is just a loose screw that I love seeing pop off every time and see what kind of commotion happens out of it. The guy is brilliant.
Wow. Like, knowing your love of very, very passionate love for IDW's More Than Meets the Eye series, as well as other comics that I've had discussions with you, you clearly have a passionate care towards the medium, and I wonder, like, specifically, what do you think is the biggest advantage and disadvantages of comics compared to film and TV?
Well, the thing with comics is, I think it's also a bit of a disadvantage. You're not gonna be pulling numbers like you are with a movie theater. Just think about it with, like, numbers itself. Wolverine, for example, in the comics, we all know how he is. He's like a 6'5", stocky kinda guy, very rugged. And then meanwhile, the movies have, Hugh Jackman, who, phenomenal as he is, he's a wonderful interpretation of the character. It's clearly, like, kinda garnered for, like, the mainstream audience. He's like, 6 foot, handsome. He's not very much like the Wolverine we see in the comics. It's a lot of differences when it comes to, like, how you need to, like, market yourself and what kinda audience you're going for. With a comic, you have a little bit more of a dedicated audience that's, I guess the right word to use is a bit more open-minded with the kind of
Mhm.
commentary it makes. It could get away with cuss words, it could get away with a little bit more violence because it's just one page as opposed to, a
Yeah,
whole sequence of events that lead up to it.
yeah.
But, with them, I've seen some great writing in comics. I've seen some really shitty writing in comics.
Mhm.
Um, I think
Mm.
people are able to, kind of like those that see the comics are able to like read a little bit in between the lines and actually take the time to work around with the issues. And it's not like there's like a huge crazy investments like there is in like adapted medias where things like need to have like a budget and a timeline and writing can change like at any point during the production. And a lot of it has to rely on how many people see it before they continue to the next one. There's never you feel like whole concrete story. There's always a sequel, but there's always something that has to like garner itself to like making the next one. It always feels like it has to be a commercial for like the next thing. Comics have that, but I feel like they at least have a little bit more of a liberty with how they treat their audience.
Yeah,
Like I've heard even the My Little Pony like comics in the IDW had some phenomenal stuff going on.
yeah,
I think, yeah, the writing is a bigger it takes a more centerfold in what they're going for. And meanwhile, in medias, it's clear they need to go for, sometimes the lowest common denominator. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Sometimes they have to get anyone that sees anything flashy and a name
yeah,
on it to be involved. Like, it's a comparison of who's gonna watch an independent film when it's going up against a box office like, an animated Disney film. It's
yeah,
clear. We all know who's gonna be where it's gonna go, who's gonna be watching what. I mean, unless you're like a crazy hipster actually involved in the film, it's
mhm,
not gonna be marketed as highly, and more
yeah,
people are gonna wanna see like something, happy, feel good than actually invest in some stories like this sometimes, unless you're Christopher Nolan or Jordan Peele these days.
yeah,
But yeah, but I guess the other advantage is, like I mentioned, is not many people are kind of like as willing to look into this, I guess, back then. But at the
yeah,
same time, it also and I think this speaks for any kind of written medium, it thrives on a lot of toxic elitism. And I
mhm,
think the worst thing about elitism is everything is an art in the end. You could have adaptations of just about anything.
yeah,
One of my favorite examples, for example, Carl Urban's Dread. This is easily one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. I fucking love Dread. I love the comics back then. I love the political commentary it had. I never saw Dread as a superhero. I always see him like as a more antagonistic role model that is equipped for police brutality. I think there's a sense of satire in regards to what he's delivered to, but he isn't someone I would want out here in real life on the streets. It's an interesting story, and you see what other characters are impacted around him
Mhm.
rather than, him evolving as a character. He's always gonna have that miserable shit scowl. He's always gonna have the helmet on his head, never showing his face. He's always gonna be, like, taking justice by the book. And, the difference is the Sly Stallone movie was a pretty much on point adaptation for what they were going for, but the writing was just all over the place. They kinda took away one of the core elements and gave Dredd a face in regards to, it being Stallone because Stallone needs the star power. And, obviously, people have a reason to rail on that and hate it for all they want, but what they don't realize is, like, the costumes, the city, the all the nods, the extra characters that were direct adaptations of the comics, they were, like, pretty much on point. They were, like, perfectly stimulated, like, from the pages of the comics onto the screen. It was like it was like, wonderland of, like, things that were, like, actually like that in, like, the original source material. But everyone's, like, railing on, like, the fact that the writing is bad, which, for good reason. Then you watch Dredd, and, a lot of people, I guess, complain that, it wasn't like it's like nothing like it's very little like the source material. It's a lot more gritty, it's a lot more Max-esque, but it has the core element of the character and everything that inspires it, and it turned out to be a really effing good film.
Yeah.
And, there's always, like, sides of that, if you have a core of a character or, like, an idea, and you work something of your own into it, and it turns out phenomenal, those are the kind of stories we need. I mean, sure, Batman doesn't kill, like, like, the new comics and all that stuff, but back then, Tim Burton's Batman, it was a completely different adaptation. This is, like, the first time
Mhm.
people were seeing Batman for what he was outside of, the campy Adam West one, and it's a fantastic story, and, it's very different, but there's always gonna be people like, "Oh, Batman doesn't kill. Michael Keaton was gonna be the worst thing ever." Even back then, they had to rush out and make a trailer just so they can get the fans to shut up. Social media wasn't a thing, but people were wondering why the guy from Beetlejuice and Mr. Mom was playing one of the most iconic grim heroes out there. Sometimes you just gotta give things a chance. People were, commentating on, like, Heath Ledger having to be, in Brokeback Mountain, how could he play someone as malicious as the Joker? And somehow he got an Academy Award for it. I mean, same thing with, Ben Affleck. Everyone made fun of him and Matt Damon and, all the other silly things he was part of, but he made himself into a competent director and actor. And say what you will about Zack Snyder's writing, I know there's always gonna be divisive opinions about it, but I thought for what he was representing, he made a very well-structured and embodied Batman in a way that was fit for the universe, I think I think the questioning of his moral code was something very integral for the character and what made the story move along. But of course, everyone's going to be very divisive about every other thing that's going on. And I just think people don't properly give it a chance before the movie comes out, after the movie comes out. It's just always like it's always like a cause of negative attention based on how many people are constantly going off on the source material. And I feel like a lot of it has to do with the fact that they feel they wanna have something of their own first, and understandably so, we all want, like, an adaptation of something that we love, but to have it, like, piece by piece be an exact replication, it almost feels like there's no point seeing the movie at the end of it, you know?
Yeah.
It's like you kinda see the movie, you expect everything the way it's supposed to happen. I think the thing that they wanna get out of this is they wanna have a source material and work with adapting it to the way it would work on the screen. And I think, in those regards, there's stories out there that are, like, pages and pages long. Watchmen was considered for the longest time to be unadaptable onto the silver screen. It was going through so many drafts, and eventually they worked into it with, David Hayter, the voice of Snake, actually working around the screenplay, and I found that I think that's a phenomenal fact to still think to this day. He actually managed to make, the movie better than the graphic novel, in my opinion, with some differences, and I actually appreciated those creative differences, but people are gonna rail over the fact that it's a, terrible film, blue penis, whatnot, and I think a lot of it just comes from the fact that fans just wanna have, like, a direct adaptation of a work that, is not gonna influence the medium in any way, and at the end of it, they wanna feel they have something special, maybe have a reason to be angry at. So,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, even Alan Moore to some extent, like, 'cause I saw a movie based on one of his works recently called V for Vendetta, and
Yeah, phenomenal movie. It's
yeah,
different from the graphic novel, but it's great
yeah.
on its own.
Yeah, it has it's different from the source material significantly, but it has different takes on the characters, but it works well for the time. Especially, like, not gonna go too much into it, but it's definitely as I'm recording this, it's very relevant to right now, but yeah,
People
listen to
shouldn't be
that.
afraid of their governments. Governments shouldn't be afraid of their people.
Yeah,
It's
and
like, they have, like, a lot of great lines and, stories and characters that, revolve to, like, things that are working on, like, a political spectrum and social commentary on its own. It's brilliant. There's differences, but I think the core message is still the same, and that's what makes it impressive still.
yeah, and then Alan Moore is getting all mad 'cause, like, "This is not the story I said, this is not the thing." I'm like, "Alright, cool. That's the story you told, but this is their adaptation of that."
Yeah, I
And
respect Alan Moore for with all due respect, and I understand DC kind of screwed him over in regards to a few things here and there, which, he has a right to be mad. But, as far as film adaptations go, I know he just saw League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and he hates it. And, rightfully so. It wasn't a great movie. Like, whether as an adapted work or a movie in itself. It's been a while since I saw it, but it's like at the end of it all, it's just it's a creator's opinion. You can't just rail against it just because one guy says it. It's sometimes you just have to like look at it through your own things. There's reviewers and critics and all these people that are going to tell you otherwise. If there's like a huge consensus of opinions telling you about a certain thing, that might be something to look out for. But literally like if you're literally like on the bandwagon of just like something based off of one thing someone said for the sake of just not liking it, it just feels like an unfair assessment.
yeah. And even, like, one of our favorite, like, Hirohiko Araki sensei of JoJo fame, even he said, like, "If you have great characters, you'll be invincible." And I feel like
Yeah,
that's
the
that
characters write themselves.
yeah, that, like, just give the characters and then fucking put them in a situation, have obstacles, and you're good to go. Through your passionate love of the anime film Redline and a lot of the Captain Falcon memery, badassery, Falcon punchery, I know that you're a big
I
fan of
get it.
the
I
F-Zero.
am a stan for F-Zero.
Yeah,
That is true.
exactly, exactly.
That's one of the most, like, iconic things people know about me. My Optimus
Yeah,
Prime hoodie or the fact that, I will spout off angrily like an old man how there isn't a new F-Zero game.
exactly, and I know you've been begging for it, like, this is like you're dropping your pants down, lighting yourself on fire in front of Nintendo, like, saying, like, "Please, I need this!"
You know
So
what? I wouldn't really go that far.
anyway, like, just because I even saw a video and I shared this with you before we started this. It was this really insightful video, like, Miyamoto said, like, "Well, why do you want this? Like, why make a game that people don't want? Because you're not putting it on Switch. You're not giving it to us, and you're not
Yeah,
giving it a chance."
yeah, I remember that whole thing, and like you mentioned with the video, I agree with the whole thing. There's, like the whole thing is, like, they're trying to find something new. You gotta keep in mind Nintendo doesn't exactly think of themselves as a video game company. I think they see themselves more as toy makers.
Yeah,
Everything is always gonna be limited. They're always trying to like work on the next thing in an innovative way. That's how they make their own games that are gonna be exclusive to them and not ported on something like PS4 and like Xbox One, you know? They wanna have something that's gonna help their sales. And
yeah,
I mean, like, it's all the power to them. It's a good way to, like, go about with your business. But it comes with the backside, and, like, you're not properly using the IPs. You're focusing on a gimmick first and the actual game second. And like I mentioned, like Star Fox with that, it's kinda how it, like, plundered with, like, some mediocre games for the time being. In regards to F-Zero, I yeah, there was, like, a lot of points in the video, and I'm sure you could, like, link it in the description or something of what we're talking about. It's a lot to go through, but, I agree with everything that they said, but, I don't know if they really want I think there was a bit of a risk when F-Zero came out at the time, and I'm gonna explain why. This is a span between 2003 and 2004. I think Nintendo were really trying to make F-Zero be the new big thing again. You had Sega and Nintendo joining forces for the first time, bitter rivals, like, from the start. They were like, this was like a fever dream. They were never gonna do anything together. Sonic and Mario, Sega does with Nintendo. There was a fierce rivalry going for the longest time. The fact that Nintendo went out of their way to work with Sega at this point to make this game, this perfect game we call F-Zero GX, phenomenal. I love everything about it. But, they did that. That was a huge, I'm sure that was a huge cost. They made the F-Zero AX machines, which were also part of promotion, which were arcade machines that you would find, and those cost a lot of money. And
Mhm.
from the way I'm seeing it now, I actually follow Reddit, like Reddit threads regarding if there's any machines that still exist out there. The last time I managed to use one was at Wonderland near here for maybe like 5 years ago.
Mhm.
And such beautiful experiences. And I'm still to this day looking around and seeing if there's any in North America or Europe. And I might plan a trip to Japan just to play one at this point because there's only like a few left there. But yeah, it's like there was a lot of money pushed into these AX machines as well. On top of that, they released the anime F-Zero GP Legend, which 51 episodes, Jesus Christ. Like, I actually had to sit through the whole thing, and I'll be absolutely honest, this wasn't the best writing ever. It was like 40 episodes of filler, then 11 episodes where they actually decide to do something with the plot. And I get it, there's a lot of characters and racers to go about it, but it
Mhm.
could have been so much more coherent. So 51 episodes of that, that was a clear investment that they spent a lot of money trying to get the animation going. Then they made the game based off of that, and then they made a second game based off of that anime, so God knows how much the storylines are, like, kinda tied, whether the anime is the new main storyline or GX, but point is, like, in the span of, I think, those 2 years, they were really giving all they had with where F-Zero was going, and, I think they were expecting, like, big results, people would really be going for this thing, and it was phenomenal, it's a perfect game to me, it's, like, one of the best
Mhm.
I've ever played in my life. But like it mentioned in the video, GX didn't sell as much units as they would have hoped. And if in that case, you might as well put the number towards AX where, not many people would have been going for those arcade machines as opposed to other ones that were happening. Like think about it. Like the people were probably like there was more popular IPs that were like kind of getting that are like get the arcade treatment, House of the Dead or Time Crisis. Those are the ones people are usually going for.
Mhm.
And, and GP Legend, it went to the North American market through 4Kids, only had 15 episodes, and then they just abruptly ended the English dub.
Yeah.
So, I can't help but feel I'm not saying it's like a confirmed matter over here, but I feel 2003 and 2004 was a very difficult time where they tried to go all in with F-Zero and the results were less than stellar. And I think
Yeah.
that was also a huge factor as to why there hasn't been another attempt in a while ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on top of that, we're talking, many years after where, they're wondering where's the best way to go about this again. Falcon in Smash, he was always like that's how he's known for now. That's where all the memes are. That's where his personality is at. Gon is like the stoic hero that, never thanks, mom. Gon is the stoic hero that, had, like, little to say where there was, like, no memes of Falcon punches and, he kinda had his way about. And, and that's people don't see that as Falcon anymore from the mainline games because they look at Smash and kinda see a little bit more of a flashy, flamboyant personality that is, like, the polar opposite of what Falcon is.
Yeah.
And yeah, I kinda miss that kinda, like, more stoic protagonist approach like he kinda had. He was kind of awesome in his own way. It was like a video game Chuck Norris and
Yeah.
without, the discrimination.
Exactly.
But yeah, Falcon was, always someone I just kind of admired as a kid. He was like a badass. He and it was like it was stupidly cheesy, but at the same time, it worked with the tone. He went off against, all the other racers, and then he went off against the embodiment of what is Satan, then he went off against God. And I guess a part of me wonders, like, well, what's next for him? What else can he do? Black Shadow, I guess, is kind of dead in both medias. Um, Not much you could really do about that, I guess. And oh yeah, I think they did also have like a Game Boy Advance adaptation called Maximum Velocity, where it's like a different time era. So they were clearly trying something with F-Zero, like, a little bit back then. But, it's just like all this kinda just, came out where they just, like, pushed in as much as they could. They didn't get the results they wanted, and I just think that they're personally afraid of going about making a new game, making the right investment of making it the best better than the other one, and the worst part is they don't even know how it's going to get better than the other one, and then expect the better sales. I mean, we're all
Yeah.
hankering for it, but at the end of the day, it's more of like a cult following. It's just like a hardcore fan base that's still playing the same game over and over again. And I'll tell you, there's still people that are like, the same way people are still playing Melee, we're like exposing any kind of like, glitches or playthrough or plays and trying to find like every way to like match the new world record. And F-Zero has a very notorious difficulty and skill set that's like very similar to like the technique you'd have in Melee. But look at like where Melee went up. Everyone was like obsessing over it, and then Brawl came out and people were disappointed how Brawl turned out because, it wasn't like the same mechanics or play style, and people were being more competitive in Melee. Nintendo keeps making like more Smash games after that, and there's people that are still more attached to Melee or Project M for that matter. And I think that the thing with F-Zero is the next game that's going to come out, I don't think it's going to be as good because Nintendo clearly doesn't have the same mindset it did back then with how Sega worked itself into it into making one of the best competitive games out there and with a notorious AI, some great style to it. Nintendo's obviously going to kind of do their own thing. And the situation is I think Nintendo's a little bit hypocritical for that matter because they're like talking about how they need to make something different and better. Meanwhile, they're still releasing the same kind of Mario Kart all these years with like little to no mechanic changes unless it's like a huge gimmick for like the next generation console. And they recently even made like a mobile version of it. So I think it's less about, oh, we got to find a new way to make the game work, which, we all know it's kind of ridiculous for F-Zero. F-Zero works its way because it's very fast paced. They're looking for, they're looking for a financial structure behind it. They want something that's going to make the same kind of money, Mario Kart does because it's a big IP. Animal Crossing is getting more games because it's the new big thing. Fire Emblem got started with Smash Bros. Then they started adapting some stuff into Americas, and that's all the things. That's a lot of the games people are really going after. Listen, to like anyone like in the early 2000s who was even heard of Final Fantasy when it was still having games released, and now it's like the biggest thing, and people are complaining they're getting too many characters in Smash. At the end of it all, it's just a matter of like where their profits lie, and Nintendo having the toy maker mentality, they're obviously going to make more, Transformers, like Transformer figures, than they are of like some kind of random thing that people just want back for the sake of nostalgia.
Yeah.
It's a big IP. Mario can get away with as many things as he wants. Zelda is always going to be like the big bang. Meanwhile, stuff like Metroid and F-Zero and Star Fox are kind of just like squandered into, Smash Bros, which, while although respectable, and Sakurai is great for that. I respect everything that he does. But I don't think it's ever gonna get like that kind of love or high note as it does than, just being in a fighter. And if it does, I don't think it's gonna go over too well with some people's heads, especially with like what 17 years of playing the same game and kind of expecting that elitism of it never not going to be as good as the last one. I can guarantee that's gonna be the issue.
Yeah. At the very least, I'm hoping, like, it gets some sort of Switch like, a Switch port or something like that, where you could buy it in a marketplace, but
Oh god, you know what? If they wanna have one thing they wanna improve on, this is the perfect opportunity to give GX online play. Do you have any idea how many people want to actually be able to play this outside of its decaying shelf life right now? Not only with like, with a new console and maybe some refurbished graphics, but just being able to play against other people. That would be great. So if they can get a dedicated online with that, that would work phenomenal.
so one last question, and this is it. I try to ask this question to as many of the guests as possible. Gonna make this a very traditional one. Whether in your creative life or your personal life, what was the most difficult thing you've gone through, and how'd you overcome it?
Hmm. I don't know. With someone like me, there's always been like a lot of hills and bumps on the road here. Things that you kind of, whether it be creative or personal, you have to take everything into account and have it like work with the best in your life. You could get hit with anything, and it's not the issue of like how like feelings and emotions, but like what you do to get past it. Um, I don't know. There's honestly a lot of hills that I've kind of had to go through in regards to understanding my time and place with like making content. Um, I mean, truthfully, I kind of just trying to think here. I think at the end of it, I think it's me just kind of being semi-retired from voiceover. It was something I was like super passionate for like years and years, and I always wanted to go into it. And I felt I would be like, the big cheese and get through. Went against my parents. I went against like, typical I went against like the typical ruling from like my acting film and television program. I was
Mhm.
like completely, fuck the system with wanting to go into business school. I was not happy trying to get into it. But it was something like my parents kind of pushed me into. So I was just like constantly running about with like this whole mindset of freedom and being like, I'm gonna get it through. I'm gonna get to like a some kind of union. I'm gonna like get into voiceover, and I'm working with so many wonderful people. And, I think more and more I realize that thing that I was fighting for and constantly like hitting and like butting heads over and thinking it was going to be like my guaranteed career role. I realize there's so many others out there that are working much harder, that are working so much more professionally. And at the end of it all, just have so much of a better shot. And I think that was a hard thing to look at because I was trying for like some of the early behind the voice actor things with trying for voicing some characters, and I didn't get through some rounds. I was, obviously discouraged with auditions. And it's understandable. It happens to everyone. Like even the best won't be able to like land the role they want to get through first through. I remember even being subscribed to voices.com hoping I can get somewhere, but still nothing. And I don't think it's so much that I have, like, terrible way of, like, going about range or voice or acting. I think I'm good with what I'm able to handle sometimes. It's just when you're kinda looking at the main spectrum of things, you realize there's so many more people that kinda have their shit together with this sort of thing. And for the longest time, that did make me kinda depressed. And I was thinking, I kinda relied my entire heart and soul into acting. I got told by a school that I would never go through with it when other friends of mine also got kicked out. It was a very subjective program. It was like, what, 20 people come in, only 8 people are allowed to go to the next step. So it was just kind of like they need to, cut out someone there. And the sad thing with me is, well, I heard this on the inside too, but especially with like in the world of acting, they want to try and like diversify their field. So having like, the white guy with the brown hair and the blue eyes like everyone else, they already had enough of them, so they had to, boot me off kinda thing. And, I just remembered, like, m my family not talking to me for, like, the longest time. Hell, I wasn't even picked up from school, that fucked me up for a while. But, yeah, it's just, like, after those moments and just, like, kinda going with the motion of stuff and kind of, like, asserting myself with, I guess, understanding like the world of business a little bit more, I kind of started taking more into the idea of maybe not voice work, but finding some other way to support this kind of knowledge and talent for other people. And I notice a lot of people are usually coming to me for like voice direction or advice or help with figuring out who to talk to and equipment. And I mean, I have people like, phenomenally talented friends like, Tom going to me for, like, advice and LJ, and I'm just like, "Jesus, you guys are, like, way further in the game than I am. What the hell do I have?" So for the longest time, I thought I was like, I thought it was, like, a little bit, I wouldn't say of an insult, but it was just kinda like I just felt like, I was just, like, kinda being pitied at this point. But at the end of it all, I just kinda realized there's a bigger strength I kinda have. I've been finding have a much more bigger knack when it comes to writing, when it comes to voice direction, when it comes to connecting people to projects. And I've just started kind of utilizing it like that. I stopped really labeling myself as a voice actor and more of an enthusiast. And I think one of the biggest moments I realized that was was with my interview with Cal Dodd back when I was working at Screen Geek. I was in entertainment journalism for a little bit. I quit. Um, I just realized it was not like my kind of thing after a while. But one of the experiences I had was actually going out of my way to talking with Cal Dodd, the original voice of Wolverine from the X-Men animated series. It was a simple interview. He knew I did my research. I presented myself really well based around my business etiquette. And, I kind of rented an area in the hotel, had my friend take some photography, and we just kind of, shot together and it was great. And I just decided as a last minute thing, well, what if I got him to say an event? What if I, because he was clearly missing the role, I decided to just have him, read a iconic moment in the comics from Old Man Logan, and he did it, and it turned out really good. And I decided to make something of it as a promotion. I talked my boss at the time into doing it. I got one of my friends to do music, another to do the motion animation, and got him to re-record that. And a lot of people were like loving it, and he really enjoyed it. And just kind of got me thinking I'd love to do this kind of stuff a little bit. I was actually inspired a lot by Adi Shankar from doing a lot of his bootleg films, like things like Thomas Jane's Dirty Laundry, where Thomas Jane, one of my favorite Punisher actors ever, came back to the role and he helped like get Dread off the ground, and he made an animated thing for Judge Death, which clearly one of my other favorite characters out there, and Truth and Journalism with a Venom fan film. So I just started kind of thinking, I'd love to like maybe do something of my own and maybe give myself more of a producer role, I think. So I kind of help LJ once in a while with like writing with Black Butler stuff. Spinning Egg Zone is a great love child of mine and Witty's at the point. He kind of helped pitch like the first episode to me some time ago. And then once it finally came out maybe a year later or so, I decided to like delve into more ideas, and it kind of made it to what it is today. And it's like a huge collaboration project where there's like so much love and fun with the characters and the universe we're creating that's completely out of the spectrum of like any other Sonic medium. I get people like we had people literally commenting that we had people literally commenting how much they wanted to see the series because it's so different. I started like applying that with like some other things. I actually helped produce an independent horror film, which was really awesome. I saw a premiere for it.
Yes.
Had the guy playing the recent Pinhead from the latest Hellraiser film, and I watched it. It was like pretty damn good. I was like, wow, I actually had my name on that, and the cast and everyone did a phenomenal job, and it was great. It was still a premiere, so like there was like still some. It was 99% complete, but with the quarantine, I kind of looked into it. It's like, wow, I actually helped contribute for that. It really makes you think. It's like it's not so much you have to be like on the limelight of everything. Sometimes just like doing help and influencing and connecting kind of does it. And I realized I actually happen to help get a lot of people to meet together. I mean, like there's some projects out there that I'm still working on. One's original, two are going to be like big fan projects. One of them, ironically, is like I mentioned, like maybe like yourself, Kai. It's 30th anniversary project for F Zero that's going to be coming out on November 21st. It's a very short production, but I have a lot of huge collaborators in there. I got people I've worked with, people I've wanted to work with. I surprisingly got some big names in regards to some voicing and composing in there, which given some of my favorite mediums, it's like I was like impressed I was able to make this happen. So I guess a part of me just kind of sees myself less as a content creator these days and more just a potential producer role. I just want to make things happen. There's a budget, there's things I'm willing to go out of my way to pay. There's people I know, there's a phenomenal array of talent that I've connected with that are just as wonderful as they are skilled. And I just feel there's ways I could kind of help adapt some of these things. And it's kind of a it's kind of like it's kind of like I feel like I kind of have like my sense of purpose there again. I started out from like a guy that thought screaming his voice off and talking back to his parents would and never listened to his parents would, just kind of amount to like not to like being somewhere big like the rest of the voice actors. But over time, you just kind of have to let like reality hit, take things in stride, listen to the people. You don't have to completely commit your entire life to what people say, but just do enough to like listen to those around you and what they're genuinely concerned and what they see your worth in. And I guess just find a way to adapt into that. And from that, I just found, I guess, my new muse. I found a way to excel my writing and work with people and provide a business etiquette and still maintain a full-time job in the business work that I do. So I think that's the best balance I could possibly have. And I don't know, it's like I think it's still kind of a compliment. LJ goes up to me every time with a finished script of Black Butler, quote unquote finish, and tells me, Martin, how could I improve this?
Mm-hmm.
And somehow everything I end up actually recommending ends up on the final page of the thing. And then a lot of the things people are laughing at are things that I actually put in. So
Yep.
I think it just means a lot being a collaborator and being able to work with these kind of things. And I think that's where you find your strength and best, how you manage to work with others rather than constantly figuring out what you're good with yourself.
Cool. Is
Yeah, that
there
was a lot
any?
of deep shit.
No, it's all right. That's right. That's what this podcast is for. This is the like literally this thing is inspired by the Midnight Gospel. I love this shit. I love it when stuff comes up like this. But before we close this out, is there any bit of advice, anything you want to plug or anything you want to say before we sign out?
um, Man, I should have expected this question. um, yeah, just because you know what you just because you think you know what you want to do doesn't mean these things change. I mean, hell, 2020 was like a crazy time for all of us. We never saw kind of coming, and it's happened and it's affected a lot of our lives and jobs and things. The things always end up getting skewed, but it's never about like how you feel about the situation. You have every right to feel what you need to, but it's what you do at the end. It's not about sitting there and crying and telling the world that it isn't fair because the world is never fair. It never will be. It's a matter of just adapting to the times and figuring out where to work yourself with best. And just because you can find yourself just because you don't have you don't have your dream job and doing what you want to do, that's completely perfect. So long as you find something that you feel a sense of contributing and a self of contentness. Sometimes that just means more than what most people are getting out of life. And honestly, you just have to make your own happiness these days. You can't rely on anyone else. You can't have a bunch of yes men telling you what you need to do. You do need to face facts. You do need to, come to terms with like sometimes change starts with yourself. And, much like other characters we've grown up with, whether it be something like, the X-Men animated series or in recent times, someone like BoJack Horseman with, real life toxicity. It applies to every situation, whether creative or personal. The change has to come from within. And I've had to make a lot of mistakes to where I go through my time to, I guess, figure out a place where I feel like I truly belong. So keep making mistakes, keep adapting, and just be true to yourself.
You can
I had
find
to do I had to do something completely different than the usual. Advice, go to school, get this stuff, read this. I just feel like, people just really need to maybe something different.
exactly. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap for our show. Thank you for listening, and remember to wear your strangeness and nerdy heart with pride. I totally did that in one take, and I didn't fuck that up the last time. Good night, everybody.